Why don't you share a little bit more about what Aiden does and what you do as well? I don't think a lot of people have met you yet. So, um, yeah, let's chat about Patricia.
Spotlight. Yeah, so I actually met Aiden Weir about a year ago when I had a short-term rental property more or less fall on my lap without me wanting to manage it. I had done what was called Airbnb arbitrage, and the person that was supposed to do it for me unfortunately did not end up delivering it. And I ended up having to take over and manage it myself. And I knew nothing about short-term rental, nothing about Airbnb. And so I was like a little lost puppy when I joined his one of his calls. And then it was actually with his help that I was able to grow the portfolio that I have now in Canada and in the US. And so I thought, what better person to bring on the call to share what Airbnb or short-term rental arbitrage is and how it can benefit investors of all levels. And it's very popular because of the low amount of capital that you actually need to get started. A fun fact about Aiden, I mean, I'll do a little bit of an intro when he gets here, but if you guys want to know about him, is Aiden is the co-founder of Vicaria, which is a company that dedicates itself to launching Airbnbs for clients in 30 days or less. So they have over 500 across the US. They've helped a number of clients. So he really knows his stuff. He also has a school group that he runs where, depending on the level of interest that you have, he helps you set up all the way, like starting from finding your property, sourcing, researching the market, all the way to the things that we all know, which is guest relations, enhancing experiences, how you can integrate upselling into your operations for more cash flow. So Aiden actually started. Like many of us in a different industry. So he did walk away from a six-figure nuclear industry job at OPG, Ontario Power Generation. I think that's what it's called. Which is something that I myself need to do. Though walking away from those six figures is really difficult, isn't it, Joseph? But he did that and he jumped headfirst into short-term rentals. And now I think he casually mentioned last week that his portfolio generates about $200,000 a month. He's just like, I haven't
Wow.
actively tried to grow it, but I think it's bringing in about $200,000 a month. And we're like, only? That's nothing. So, as you can imagine, a lot of people are looking for that type of financial freedom. So, I'm excited to have him on. I'm going to be asking him some pointed questions so that people on the call can take some notes, some tips, see if this is something that they want to explore. Because we all love the large multifamilies. I myself have my portfolio there, but let me tell you, Airbnb or short-term rental cash flow doesn't hurt one bit. So excited to bring him on later. So I already gave you guys a little bit of an intro on Aiden, who is what I like to call my short-term rental mentor. So I'm very delighted. He's rolling his eyes, and I am delighted to have him on the call. So essentially, I wanted to do a little bit of a Q&A with you directly to get people on the call to understand what Airbnb or short-term rental arbitrage is, how it can be a very profitable way to get into the real estate world, and also talk a little bit about the services that you offer through your businesses, Vicaria, and also Arbitrage Alliance in the school community. So, uh,
Sure.
I think one of the biggest questions that anyone who doesn't know about arbitrage is that most investors are familiar with owning real estate, but arbitrage is different. As you said, your power is in not owning land. So, can you explain in, I guess, layman's terms or simple terms, how arbitrage works and arguably why it can outperform traditional rental models?
Yeah, sure. So I'll take a step back here because I know that generally people that really love real estate investing and stuff like that might originally be opposed to something that we offer. So I've built my majority of my wealth through real estate without actually owning the property. We lease and we make deals with property management companies. We're nationwide. We have a couple in Korea and like odd spots. We're majority across the US. And we partner up with property management companies that have vacancy across their building, and we take them on, lease them with favorable terms, and then we just re-rent them across all the platforms. So VRBO, Booking.com, blah blah blah. Now, the most obvious thing that I hear, and what you guys are probably thinking, was like, "Wow, why would you rent when you can just own?" It's a really good question, because if you do have the money, in many cases, you should own. But there are a lot of people in the U.S. and Canada that are just working their traditional 9 to 5s, and they don't necessarily have a way, or they do, but it's a long wait period before they actually have enough funds to get that first property, right? Then you have to make all your mistakes, and then you have to learn enough to get your second and your third, and it's just a very long learning curve. Um, so what I've been teaching people and helping people do, directly through our company, is we are setting them up with leases, and they are gaining cash flow very quickly now, and then they're using this cash flow to funnel into actually purchasing their assets at an accelerated rate. We like them to, learn the complete ins and outs. It's always active, right? But it's as passive as can be when, you have a team that manages the guest communications. You have a certain hierarchy where you're not like waking up every day to a burst of pipe, but you guys all know this stuff. Um, and then they can take that, and then when the time comes, they do want to purchase their first whatever motel, fourplex, whatever it is, right? They don't need to pay 20% to a property management company. They don't need to do any of this stuff, and they can just collect the cash flow from those assets as well. So it's a little bit different than what you guys are probably used to here, but I think it's an incredibly powerful model for people that are just starting real estate, or anyone that just needs immediate cash flow, and they can just funnel it into the deals at a much faster rate.
And I think one of the biggest fears that a lot of people have when they're thinking about short-term rental is that there's a concept that it's oversaturated, that the market is oversaturated with short-term rentals. But I think, I mean, I've seen it firsthand, I'm experiencing it firsthand. The portfolios continue to grow, the profit continues to grow. So what would you say is a misunderstanding about the market right now?
So you're going to hear that, like, we've been hearing real estate saturated since the dawn of time, and it's still, doesn't matter who you're talking to, right? Real estate saturated, short-term rental saturated. And I would say that I think most people here would agree too. It's very similar to, purchasing houses. If you go purchase a house in, I don't know, in between two cities, the middle of nowhere, you might get, some cash flow, but then the appreciation next to none. And then vice versa, right? If you go right to a deep metropolitan area, you might get some appreciation, but you're making no money in cash flow. Um, so it's similar to that in the sense that it's not about what market or what city you're in. It's about finding the pockets in those cities and finding the unit size in that city, that actually makes money. So like maybe Chicago doesn't make money, but a certain submarket in Chicago for this specific unit size, like 4 bedrooms, makes a ton of money, right? So how can you say Chicago as a whole is saturated if there's so many different great opportunities in those? And I've also found, Patricia, which I always say to you too, is that the most profitable built locations I've ever had are the places you would never even think of, right? It's not Orlando, it's not Nashville. All of those are, of course, great if you're great. But, the most profitable building I've ever had is in Pittsburgh, in like the South Side Flats, which isn't even, it's a nowhere. It's nowhere, right? And it's just absolutely like printing money. Um, yeah,
And that's actually something that we talk about in the training calls with Aiden is the concept of printing money. It actually happens. You get to see, like I got one booking that is like 3 months of rent, or at least worth that, and it's absolutely crazy. One of the things that is like a crucial thing in doing this, it's getting the landlord to say yes, right? Because you're essentially renting properties from landlords and then putting them on short-term rental sites and getting, I think that's probably the scariest part to a lot of people. Like, how do you get the landlord to say yes? So, can you or give us a high level of the process of securing a property? Like, how do you get success when most landlords will be predisposed to say no to this type of proposal?
sure. So again, I'll take a step back just to give you guys a brief update. So what our company does at its core is that we are actually building these businesses for people, and then taking royalties from them. So that means that we've probably set up, I think the exact number is 537. I think that's the exact amount we've launched. I can't even tell because there's so much going on in the background. So somewhere in that ballpark. But we have been able to sustain the acquisitions for all of our clients, as well as us. So to do that, there's a certain few things that you actually have to do to get these managers to say yes. Because if you show up and you say, I want to lease your property on Airbnb, they're going to laugh in your face. Trust me, they've laughed in my face. Um, so there's very certain ways that you have to go about it to actually, get them to want to learn more. So to give you something tactical, usually what we say is, hey, we're looking to lease 10 to 20 units in your building. We have you are never going to find a tenant as aligned as us because of XYZ. We'll take care of the property. You have rent secured against our turnover. There's only one point of contact. It's me. You don't have to deal with anyone else. We'll lease these as long as we can. Um, and a lot of you guys already know this. There's a lot of smart people here. I'm just saying that when you highlight the value add compared to what you want out of it, it's very easy to get these deals. And then once you have these good relationships with property managers, there's probably a few in here, and they take on a new deal or they take on a new building and that building is bleeding vacancy. They're like, oh, Aiden, would you like these? Would you like these? Like, you guys helped me out in the last one. And it gets to a point where you actually have too many deals to take on because you've built so many relationships. And that's kind of how our company came to be, because we couldn't take them all. And we also didn't want to scale, to 400 locations with just 3 people. That's, a nightmare. So we found this middle ground where we're actually helping other people set them up. We get the royalties, not the operational drag of so many properties. And then we also get to actually use these relationships instead of just giving them up.
And I think I know I'll make this probably like our last call, our last question, and then see if anybody has any questions. But
Sure.
I wanted to ask, I think this is the most appealing part is the cost of entry, right? I think one of the biggest barriers, entry barriers into real estate is how much it can cost to essentially, put a down payment, closing costs, and all of that. On average, and I know it's an unfair question, but maybe we can pick like a
Mhm.
random market, but on average, how much cash would you need to get started so people on the call can see how possible it is, or how if they thought they couldn't buy, that maybe this is a way of entering. And like you said, Airbnb may not be like you don't build a portfolio on Airbnb arbitrage just to stick with it. Like you can funnel that money into owning real estate later. I think you actually said it way better. You said something like it gets you real estate. Airbnb arbitrage
Yeah,
gets you real estate. So if you can maybe talk about those numbers, I think a lot of people on the call would be very interested to hear how accessible it is.
sure. So I was just in Cleveland. I just came home the other day. We set up 10 A-class units right in downtown Cleveland. They're a mix of 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. So for a 1 bedroom apartment, you can get it set up through and through for probably under $10,000, and it can be good. Like, genuinely, it looks great. So depending on where you're buying a house, you could use that down payment, right, and get 8, 7, 9, right, of course, depending on where you are, of these arbitrage units, and you could get the cash flow that you need to actually push into purchasing real estate at a much faster rate. And again, I want to clarify, this isn't for everyone, but there are some people, right, that just don't have access to these funds. So what are they going to do? Get one house, wait 5 years, get 2 houses, wait 5 years. You're going to be 50 by the time you actually get to a point where you can see that wealth, right? So I just can't stress enough how much of a great vehicle this is to just expedite the process into real estate. So like I was saying, it's about $10,000 for a 1 bedroom, Patricia. Um, but I will take that a step further. For units, just apartments, okay. The most important thing for apartments is the cash on cash return. And how you actually get that is from getting free rent concessions. So we have like a golden rule of thumb where we look for $1,000 a month in profit. So when I say that, you're probably like, okay, so you can make your money back in, 10 months, which would be correct. But when we're taking on these large deals, 10 units, 20 units, 25, we've taken up to 35 at once. We have the power to actually just the negotiation is just in our favor. So we're able to um, allow them to give us 12 weeks free, 14 weeks free, 10 weeks free, whatever. Of course, depending on slow season, how in demand they are, all that good stuff. What that actually allows you to do, if you're efficient, is that first 10 days, you can get all this stuff set up in 10 days if you're good, right? That means that you have the next 11 weeks of just your revenue minus obvious expenses, right? Like cleaning, blah, 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 is just profit, right? So if you wanted to pull out debt or whatever, if you're comfortable with that, you can pay it back in arguably 4 months and then just do it again and then just do it again. So the power of this model, of course, it has a good return on investment, but the power of the model is actually the cash on cash return and how fast you can funnel it and just keep funneling into more and more units. And so you get to a point where you're like, wow, I'm making like $50,000 a month in cash flow. And again, you're right. It's just cash flow. It falls out the back end, right? That's the issue is it's not sticky. It's not reoccurring. That's the downfall of arbitrage. But you use that cash flow, like I'm beating a dead horse now, and then funnel it into actual assets that do create wealth.
And actually, Aiden, we have a question in the
Sure.
chat. What is the split for approaching landlords versus property managers or property management? Is it 50-50?
Do you mean like how often do I approach one or the other? Or sorry, I just want to make sure
You
I
know
answer
what?
correctly.
She's on the call, so go ahead.
Hey there, Aiden. Thank you for
Hi
showing
there.
up such short notice. And
Yeah, of course.
I don't want to blow wind up your skirts, guys, but you make a great dynamic duo. I mean, yeah, I just kind of wanted to give you props for that. But Aiden, what I was referring to, so you mentioned earlier in your presentation that you approach property management, but you
Correct.
also approach like, single or just regular landlords.
Yep.
So what's the split? Like, is it mostly property management that you approach? What's the
That's actually
profile, I guess?
that's a great I understand now completely. So at the beginning, when you're first starting, you have no credit history, you have nothing, right? You're pretty much just like reaching out to people. So when people are just starting, I always tell them to spend more time trying to contact actual landlords. Like, you can go on Zillow, you could find like call John. It's just like some guy. He has 3 properties, whatever. It's a lot easier to convince this person to allow you to do this compared to if you try and talk to a large property management company and you say like I want to lease your Airbnb like your property and you're like just this you don't have a website, you have nothing, they're just gonna laugh in your face, right? So at the beginning I strongly lean towards like actual landlords, and then as you develop it you really do become a real company, because at first you're not a real company, right? When you do turn into a business, I recommend going much more towards the property management, and that's just so you can grow vertically. And it's the same thing as like in your guys' realm, where it's like buying single family home, single family home, versus you start buying buildings or you start actually developing, right? It's just like you're moving vertically. So for us, like if we were to take just like 2 units or 1 unit, so like what's even the point, right? For us to grow or even sustain like our acquisitions for all of the people, we need to take at least 20, at least 30. That's why it doesn't necessarily make sense, because there's only so many home run houses. They're out there, but of course it can't facilitate enough to to get to where you want to go. Hopefully that makes sense.
And actually,
Just quickly there,
oh yeah,
sorry.
Yeah,
I think
perfect, perfect. Thank you. That was
I think
great.
she
Thanks,
was also
Aiden.
kind of asking like when you're approaching these landlords, are you pitching, hey, we'll split it 50-50, or are you pitching, hey, I'll pay the market rents for the next 2 years on a lease, and that way you have security.
Gotcha. If that's what you meant, I apologize. I've had a long day.
No, no,
um,
Aiden. Wait, stop. Aiden, you answered the question. Connor, you misinterpreted, but that brought
Mhm.
about a great, even greater question. So we're
Okay,
all winners here. But yeah,
cool.
there
Yeah.
you go.
it was a
That
great follow-up question anyway, so
was a
perfect.
great follow-up, Connor. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Connor, we always offer to pay market rent. We don't even bother trying to go below market rent because we would rather the concessions up front, right? So it's always just market rent. We will take care of this. You want passivity, you finally get passivity. I'll call you if it blows up. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, other than that, like we will handle this. All the minor wear and tear, like unless an appliance goes, your HVAC blows up, like literally, you don't have to hear from us. So that's like usually our main value add for landlords. And like some little things, we'll also be like, if you decide to sell it, you could use a lot of professional photos, stuff like that. We just like very much make it collaborative and make it the passivity they actually want. Because like as you know, for most single family homes, it really is just like a very small scale investor with 3 properties, 2 properties, and they really don't want that headache, right? It's not someone's full-time job. So that's like usually the direction we lean on, just market rent.
Gotcha. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, of
and
course.
Ailey, just one thing also, you're also letting them know that you are professionally cleaning this property quite a number of times per month. You're keeping their property in tip-top shape. Your business runs on that property looking great at all times and running smoothly. And so there's a lot. I don't know if there's many landlords here that have gotten a property back after someone leaves, and you're like, oh my goodness, I have to put like $5,000 of repairs into this. That's not going to be the case with this type of model because we don't make money if the house looks awful. So we're constantly having to fix things, patching things, and we're not bugging the landlords to do so. So that's one part. And then the other part that I want to say is landlords and property managers are one thing, but and Aiden can attest to this because our business, or Kidia, in which we do Airbnb arbitrage, we've grown actually by connecting with people just like you. I do multifamily investing. I have multifamily investor friends, and I think I literally just said, I'm looking for units to rent. Who wants to rent me a unit? Let me see. And every single unit that's in my portfolio came from a real estate friend.
That's a wrap on part 1 of our Airbnb arbitrage segment here at the Deal Room at Practice Your Pitch. Leave a comment, like, subscribe, and let us know. And check back for part 2. Catch the rest of the story with Patricia and Aiden.